Absent. Parodi,
Here.
Urig,
Here.
Osborne,
Here.
Cardenas,
Here.
and Chair Sierra.
Here.
Thank
And we are here for the Thursday, February 18th meeting. Let's see, if I could get you to remind participants of remote participation housekeeping.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. A couple of Zoom reminders. For all the panelists, please remember to mute your mic when not speaking. If you'd like to comment. Thank you. If you're an attendee, you will be in listen-only mode. All attendees will remain in listen-only mode unless unmuted by SBCAG staff to provide public comment. Comments from the public are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The public will not be able to share the video or screen. When public comment is called for an agenda item, attendees may use the raise your hand button to express desire to provide public comment for that item, and you will be unmuted when it is your turn. Those calling in on the phone can dial *9 to raise your hands. If anyone from the public experiences difficulty or problems with the Zoom meeting, please text or call area code 805-588-2455 to make public comment or any questions. Thank you, and that concludes my Zoom reminders.
All righty. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow. Okay, moving on to public comment. Clerk, is there any public comment?
Chair Sierra, we've received no public comment.
All righty, I'm closing public comment. Moving on to the approval of consent calendar. If you could list those really quickly, please.
Consent calendar approval of minutes, approval of 2021, or this is approval of minutes. Approval of the 2021 Transit Needs Assessment Memorandum. Approval of 2021 Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Approval of 2021-2022 TDA LTF appropriatements. And Highway 101 severe receptors in segment 4C and 4D.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
Chair Sierra, we received no public comment on any of the consent items.
Thank you. Closing public comment on that. Would any directors like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Hearing none, is there any board discussion? If not, is there a motion?
Move consent
Hartman moves
calendar.
approval.
And was that a second from you, John?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for roll call, Director Williams,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hartman. She said aye, okay. Patino,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Urig,
Aye.
Cardenas,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Parodi, Paula, or Director Parodi?
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you. Clark?
Aye.
Murillo?
Aye.
And Chair Sierra.
Aye. Thank you
Motion
very
passes
much.
13-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 5 into the record?
Item 5, Regional Housing Needs Allocation Determination. 5A, review the final 6-cycle RENA determination for the SBCAG region and direct staff to accept the final determination. Or 5B, review the final 6th-cycle RENA determination for the SBCAG region and direct staff to file an objection with the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
Thank you. And we have a presentation by Michael Becker.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sierra and Directors. I'm Mike Becker, the Director of Planning. This morning's item is on the region's RENA determination. And at the end of my brief presentation, we will ask you to either accept the determination provided to the region by the Department of Housing and Community Development or to direct us to file an objection. We have Brian Breslin on the Zoom call, and if there's a question I can't answer, and assuming Zoom stays working, we can turn to Brian. All right, you've seen this slide before, but it's useful in broadly highlighting the RENA process. First, the blue box, we have the region's determination. The determination represents the housing need as identified by Housing and Community Development, or HCD, while following a formula defined in state law. Every 8 years, the state provides us with this number. Next, the yellow box, we have the methodology for allocating that number to the region's local agencies. During your December meeting, we brought the methodology to you to authorize us to submit it to HCD for review. HCD recently completed its review, and the methodology will be on your agenda next month for formal adoption. And finally, the green box. With the number of housing units determined and the methodology finalized, we will be able to issue draft allocations to the region's local agencies. We expect to do this following the board's March meeting. On a later slide, I will touch on the next steps a bit more. This slide highlights the determination for the 6th RENA cycle, which is 2023 to 2031 for us. The region will be required to accommodate 24,856 housing units. On the right, you can see that it's divided by income level. These proportions are based on what is currently on the ground in our region. For instance, 23.3% of the region's households fall into the very low income category. And therefore, our determination includes 23.3% of the units for that group. The very low is 0 to 50% of median household income. Low is 50 to 80%. Moderate is 80 to 120%. And above moderate is greater than 120%. The region's median household income is approximately $77,000. This table highlights how HCD calculates the determination. And if we were to file an objection, it would essentially be on identifying how this table is not accurate. The process starts with the forecasted population for the end of the period, 2031 in our case. Subtracting out the group quartered population, which is students in dorms, prisoners, and the like. And the result is the number of people requiring housing by the year 2031. Household formation rates are then applied to turn that number of people into the number of households. Line 8 shows the existing housing units, and they are subtracted from the 2031 need. Lines 5, 6, 7, and 9 are adjustment factors applied to achieve certain state objectives. They include vacancy rate, overcrowding, cost burden, and each of those add units to improve the conditions that they seek to improve. And the final one is replacement, and this is based on housing units demolished or lost for one reason or another. I note Senate Bill 828 on the slide. SB 828 is new to this cycle, and its application changes the RENA process. SB 828 was passed in 2018, and it added the cost burden and overcrowding adjustment factors, and it also changed the vacancy rate factor. For vacancy rate, prior to SB 828, a healthy vacancy rate was considered 2% for owner-occupied units and 5% for rental units. SB 828 enabled HCD to make it 5% across the board. I'll touch on it more in a bit, but we have the ability to influence the overcrowding and cost burden factors, and we did do that. This slide shows how the determination stacks up against prior determinations. So the 24,856 is the whole way to the right, which is the determination that we're talking about today. And you'll see that it's significantly higher than prior cycles, especially the fifth cycle, which the plan was adopted by the SBCAG board in 2013, and that was 11,000 units, and now we're looking at nearly 25,000 units. The reason that it is significantly higher is because of SB 828. Here are a few summary points on the determination. Last July, we were issued a draft determination of 29,313 units. Our final number is approximately 15% lower than that initial draft. The second bullet highlights the impact of Senate Bill 828. Nearly half of our determination resulted just from SB 828. Without SB 828, our determination would have been comparable to prior cycles. SB 828 allows SBCAG or regional agencies to provide an analysis of comparable regions to be used for calculating the overcrowding and cost burden adjustments. If we don't do this, HCD compares us to the national average. So we did do this, and our comparable regions analysis reduced the number by nearly 2,600 units. Earlier this month, we asked the Technical Planning Advisory Committee to make a recommendation to you for the question you're about to answer. The advisory committee was unanimous in recommending that we accept the determination. And finally, any objection we file has to say how the law was not properly applied. SBCAG staff has not found a point to object on. And with that said, and based on the experience of other regions, an objection is likely not, will not be successful. This slide highlights some coming decision points that you will be considering. Today, we are asking you to accept the determination or to direct us to file an objection. We will be back next month asking you to formally adopt the methodology. And following that action, we will issue draft allocations to each local agency, which begins a 45-day appeals period. Should we receive any appeals, this board will hear and consider them, likely during its June meeting. Finally, we will return once more to seek adoption for the RENA plan and complete SBCAG's role in the process. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff?
I have questions. It's Director Murillo, please.
Certainly, please.
Have other regions been successful? How would we object? What would those grounds be? I mean, you've gone over it, Mr. Becker, but I imagine people would just want to know, are we leaving every a stone unturned to reduce the numbers? So has anyone objected, or in the past, have other regions been successful? Thank you.
Yes, Director Murillo, excellent question. So I think the one objection that I'm aware of that was somewhat successful was the Southern California region, and that was not successful based on challenging the work of HCD. I think there was between when the determination was issued and during that objection period, new census data became available, so they were just objected saying, we want you to use the newer census data. And for us, that doesn't apply. We're using the current census data. So that's the only objection that I'm aware of that was successful. I think based on the fact that housing is clearly a priority of the state right now, it appears that most regions have just been accepting the determination. There was a point that was raised a couple times through the process, and then again yesterday, related to overcrowding associated with H2A housing. And while I don't feel that an objection would solve the issue, I think that we need to highlight to HCD that we're aware that H2A housing impacts overcrowding, and that it needs to be better accounted for, because it's essentially overcrowded by design. But in my review of this, I have not seen anything that would indicate that we would be successful in an objection.
Mr. Becker, Madam Chair, so the TPAC was a unanimous vote, I think, right? 10-0. And I have to admit, I didn't watch their discussion. Well, can you just give us a sense of what the discussion items were for the, the edification of the public as well? It seems like a really strong recommendation. I'm just wondering what they talked about.
Sure, Director Maria. I think important to highlight is the recommendation from TPAC was a culmination of discussions that occurred over the course of the last year. So we saw this process develop, and we saw the draft determinations and the final determination, and how they changed, how HCD worked with us on the comparable regions analysis. We had a couple back and forth with them to make sure that we were meeting their requirements, and ultimately they accepted it and reduced it. So I think essentially, as we were set up, almost under the assumption that our determination was 29,313 since last July. Once we got the comparable regions, we had some new ACS data worked into the methodology that the committee felt that it was a fair determination, and also recognizing that housing's a high priority of the state. City of Santa Barbara staff did bring up an issue of whether or not the number reflects jobs housing balance related to workers that live just outside of the region, say either in Ventura County or in San Luis Obispo County to the north, and how that works into it. But at the end of the day, we received unanimous support for the determination.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Murillo. Any other questions for staff?
Chair Sierra.
Madam
Director
Chair.
Nelson.
Yes. Is this Director Patino?
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, I understand where staff is coming from, because it seems like these bills are written so that you really can't fight them or disagree with them. On the government code that we were given here, it says the term overcrowded means that more than one resident per room in each room in a dwelling. Does that include the kitchen? Does that include the garage? Does that include the bathroom?
Director Patino, so that is a data point collected by the Census Bureau, and overcrowded refers to more than one person per room, including a living room. And I think the best example is 2 people in a 1-bedroom apartment is not overcrowded, but 3 people in a 1-bedroom apartment would be overcrowded.
Okay, so in a 2-bedroom, it would be three people, and 4 would be overcrowding?
Yes, by
Or
census
5 would be
definition.
overcrowding?
1 person per room, no, plus the living room. So in a 2-bedroom, 3 people would not be overcrowded, 4 would. And that's a definition of the U.S. Census Bureau.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
And then following that, the term overcrowded rate for a comparable housing market, comparable housing market means the overcrowding rate is no more than the average overcrowding rate in comparable regions throughout the nation as determined by a Council of Governments, and that's us. So how do we compare here through regions throughout the nations? California is so different. Again, you're going to tell me that's the census definition?
Actually, that's, Mayor Patino, that's one that we worked through. So when SB 828 added the overcrowding factor to the formula that HCD uses to calculate our housing need, it was written that the councils of governments, us, provide the comparable regions. And if we don't do that, then HCD just compares us against national average. So what's the national average for overcrowding and how do we compare? And then they add or subtract a number of units to bring us into parity with the national average. So we worked through the process of developing comparable regions, and that worked. We did two, one for cost burden and one for overcrowding. And it's essentially looking for counties and regions of similar populations, similar demographic makeup, and they're all outside of California, and then comparing. And combined between those two, it ended up reducing our determination by 2,600 units. But we certainly, as a region, are more overcrowded than the nation as a whole, or even the comparable regions. Though when we did the comparable regions, it bridged the gap in between the national average and our what we experience in Santa Barbara County.
Thank you. I guess I just don't agree with the law, but then that's okay too. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mayor Patino, if I could quickly, I think that's a very common reaction to this is that it's really SB 828 is what caused the increase to go, or the number to go up significantly, and SB 828 is state law, and our objection, we couldn't object to state law, we can object to how a state law is applied.
Thank you.
All righty. Director Nelson?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, the H2A discussion was something that I talked to Mr. Becker about yesterday and wanted to get some further clarification. Currently, the way that we would capture an H2A house.
You cut out.
Hold on just a sec. We lost you for about 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, can you get me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
I apologize. Got some Zoomers in the house besides myself. The American Healthy Family Survey, is that where we're hoping to pick up the H2A households? Is that how that's done?
As Director Nelson, so the H2A issue, there's a number of H2A visas issued to employers or to bring migrant workers into Santa Barbara County to work in the agricultural sector. And by design, the H2A program requires the employers to provide housing. And that housing, just based off the way that it's required by the federal government, is overcrowded. And that's a conflict between the state law and federal law, but that's just H2A is overcrowded. And how does that factor into our number? So this issue came up several times throughout the process. And what we've learned was if there was a formal conversion to H2A, then the units would be considered group quarters. However, I think we've discussed that a lot of the H2A housing has not been formally converted. That it's more happening. In existing neighborhoods. So I think the resolution that we feel is probably most successful because, as I've learned, H2A information is pretty hard to come by. I think the best I've found last night was last June, we had about 1,200 H2A workers in the region. And then there's also the issue is, are the H2A workers part of our population? And that depends on how long they stay in the region. So it's certainly a gray area. And I think what we can do in the letter that we send to HCD, either accepting or objecting to the methodology or to the determination, is to highlight this issue. Say, I understand that Santa Barbara County is one of the top counties in the region or in the state of California for H2A guest workers. And we want to ensure that their living situations are not impacting our housing need. Really when it's overcrowded by design, we shouldn't be punished for that.
Right. Yeah, I would say that 1,300 number or 1,200 number, I think, is about a third what I'm aware of in our community. And I believe there are numbers out there on that. And so I'd like to have that conversation continue. I don't think there's enough evidence at this point to reject the methodology, but I would hope that we have a motion that that discussion would be a part of our acceptance letter so that we can have ongoing conversations with the state. If it is found that we are have that by design, and H2A by no means is a permanent program. It's renewed annually by the federal government, so it could go away tomorrow. So I think that's something we all need to consider as we make long-term plans for our zoning with these RENA numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, Chair Sierra, Director Clark has his hand raised.
Director Clark, go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, Carpinteria doesn't feel that the determination meets the RENA objectives in terms of affordability, socioeconomic equity, jobs and housing, in balancing income, disproportion, and affirming future fair housing. In Carpinteria, we have overcrowding because approaching 30% of our residential structures are second homes or short-term rentals. Many of those short-term rentals are flying under the radar and are illegal. And so people have to double up for housing. Many young families have to live with their parents, and that's the cause of overcrowding in Carpinteria. Carpinteria is not planning to have major job increases in the future, and so housing built in Carpinteria would be for job centers like Santa Barbara. And that because the affordability is still a problem in Carpinteria, those people are just going to get pushed, still going to be pushed to Ventura. So you can't count on Carpinteria to be a affordable bedroom community because it's just not going to happen. They're still going to go to Ventura, and they're going to commute, and so we're going to lose any hoped for greenhouse gas improvements in that regard. And to use the percentages of the housing types with the private development model, which RENA is that, let's say Carpinteria's allotment would be 1,000 homes. I don't know what the number is, but let's say just use that as an example. So we would be charged with building 390 units of very low and low income housing through the private development method, but that goes through our inclusionary housing. So we would have to actually build 2,830 units that weren't very low and low income housing just to get those. So, I feel that we need a private or a public housing model to do this. If Santa Barbara needs lots of low wage workers to live somewhere, and frankly, the people should live closer to the jobs. I think that Santa Barbara should take some of our numbers if they expect us to do their housing. Some additional areas are that we have a pending housing project in the county that borders Carpinteria, and that again is in the county, but it's adjacent to a urbanized area in the city, and we're having discussions with the county about apportionment of those RENA numbers because the county is going to create the housing, but we're going to create that it is in the city, and so those people are going to burden our services, including streets and our sheriff's contract, et cetera. And so we would like some accounting for those RENA numbers, especially since I think a lot of the growers in Carpinteria are pushing their representative to push this issue. And so this is probably just a precursor. We're going to get other applications and come up against the same situation. We're having trouble meeting these oppressive RENA numbers, and yet the county's whipping them all out all around us, and we don't get credit for them. So, I think that's, to us, that's the way that we should be going, that the housing should be built at the job centers, and that if the job center ends up being pot nurseries, that's, well, anyway, I made those points, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're still questions for staff. Director Williams.
Well, I don't think there was a question, but I guess I just want to understand from Director Clark what he is asking us to do. I mean, we have directed our staff to attempt to get the state to revise our number downward. I understand why you wanted that, and they did. So they accomplished that. So I understand, because believe me, I've walked almost all of the city of Carpinteria door to door. I understand that people have mixed feelings about housing, right? They want affordable housing for their kids and their family members, but they don't want a whole lot of building at the same time, right? So I'm just wondering, Director Clark, what do you expect us to do? Because I, in particular, wish to be acting in concert with you, but I don't really see a path when we've been successful in getting the state to revise our number downward.
If I may.
Certainly. Director Clark.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Doss, again, we people do want affordable housing. That's it. It's just that to get affordable housing, we have got to build really a lot of not low income housing, and we have very limited space in which to do all this. And I don't know where it's gonna all go. That's the problem, and I think and I realize that if you build housing and it gets put into city of Carpinteria, obviously you want those RENA numbers and we want those RENA numbers. I don't know. That's people other than us are talking about that.
Well, I think where the RENA allocation is of a given project is a side issue, but I'm glad you broached it because it's something I'm very much in agreement with you on, is that I do think that projects that are adjacent to the city of Carpinteria, that there should be a good neighbor policy and that we attempt to share those RENA credits with the city. I firmly stand with the city of Carpinteria on that particular issue. But I'm just, because I know that this represents an angst on the city's part, and in some ways, I think a very legitimate one. I think in particular, the issue of how much housing is taken up by short-term rentals and is a big one. I will also just voice another side of the angst, which is maybe my neighborhood and other neighborhoods in Carpinteria's side of the angst, which is that Carpinteria is a job center. We have an enormous amount of tech jobs, and we have an enormous amount of agricultural jobs. And a lot of those people who work in those agricultural jobs live in my neighborhood. you wonder, how do they afford to live in a neighborhood where, I nabbed the cheapest one on the block for $700,000. That was not fully built and the floors were dirt. And the answer is they have 17 people living in 2 and 3 bedroom homes. And so there is a workforce issue. There is a yearning for people to be able to have their kids live and grow up and raise their families in Carpinteria. The issue of multi-generational continuity is a really big one. And I want to give voice to that as well. But I just return the question of, besides, are you looking for us to say, yeah, this whole process is a little weird? In my view, we should be building the housing that's appropriate for our community, not directed to do that. And if that's what you want, I give voice and empathy to that angst, and will do what I can as a supervisor to stand with you. But if you're asking us to vote no, I just don't understand what the path is then. And so I'm just asking for that clarification.
Okay, and if
Can I-
you've got
can
a
I-
quick answer, Director,
Yeah, I'll try-
if, a real
I'll try to
quick
make
answer,
it
real quick.
really quick. Yeah, we want affordable housing. We just can't, build tons and tons and tons of housing. There's no place to put it. It's all owned privately. Just because, again, we've got to build 8 middle income and above affordable units just to get one low and very low income on the private model. I'm not asking you to vote no. I'm sort of trying to rethink the whole process. I think that public housing is the answer to this, not the private model. And I realize that RENA's objectives are not necessarily housing as much as they are to providing jobs for developers and for builders. I realize that, but that's my frustration with the problem.
Okay.
And again, I get the side issue about the housing at Baylor. It is a side issue, but I raise it now because I think that's a matter of equity. And if there's something that SBCAG can do about that down the line, I think it's time to mention that to see if that can somehow get wrapped into this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark. And we really need to stick with our questions before we get to public comment. So are there any other questions for staff before we go to public comment?
Chair Sierra, Director Murillo has a question.
Director Murillo, a question. Go ahead.
If I may take another bite out of the apple with another question, Madam Chair and
Please.
staff, thank you. Mr. Becker, so if I just really need to explore how, if we did want to file an objection, we would have to come up with an alternative. Is that right, sir?
Director Maria, we would have to explain how the state law is not properly applied and then show what it would look like if it were properly applied. And I should note also that today's question is about the regional number, not any number for a particular jurisdiction. And that question will be coming next month.
Right. So our city, when you make a presentation to our city council, there would be time for us to, if we thought, to object to the numbers that were assigned to us. And, we're looking here at the city of Santa Barbara at the highest number. And so to everyone listening, we will do our share. We always do. But I guess I just need to pursue this in the question side of it, that the pandemic has changed some conditions. I appreciate the conversation at TPAC about telework and how that might influence these numbers. And maybe that is something for us to look at, my council, when we decide whether to accept the numbers or to appeal. And, I feel like I'm in a funny place. I'm someone who's always advocated for housing production, reasonable. We don't want to be overcrowded either, Mr. Clark. So I'm just asking what it would look like, and you're telling me that that you don't have a plan for us to present an alternative at this point, Mr. Becker.
Director Murillo, I believe council wants to chime in real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair and Director Murillo. I just wanted to go over the legal framework quickly for the objections. I think it would be helpful in the discussion. So under Government Code 65584.01, there's only 2 grounds for objection at this stage, and they're very specific. So the board would either be saying that the department failed to base its determination on population projection for the region. So we'd be objecting to a way that they came up with the population, and then we needed to identify a different way of doing it. Or we could object saying that the regional housing need determined is not a reasonable application of the methodology and assumptions. And if we made that objection, we'd also need to include a proposed alternative. So there's only 2 options for how to object, and with each one, you need to propose an alternative.
I appreciate that, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council. Clerk, any more questions from the
Chair
board?
Sierra, I
I've got a
see.
quick one, Madam Chair.
Certainly, go ahead. Is this Director Nelson?
Thank you. Mr. Becker, how many of the units that we were allocated in the last cycle did we actually build?
Yes, Director Lavanino, good question. I believe we put together in our supplemental report, we had that number, and I believe it was about 30%. I do know more certain that over the course of the history of RENA, our region has delivered approximately 50% of our determination. So, over the last 30 years or so, about 50% of.
So we all freak out about these numbers, but we never build the housing anyway. So I get it.
A question from
Well,
Director-
it's not a question, but I wanted to agree wholeheartedly with Steve. I mean, it is, I've been through this process, now that I'm getting gray and becoming the elder statesman, I've been through this process several times. And every time this number seems apocalyptic, and people's reactions are apocalyptic. Everybody gets scared. And from my perspective, it's a little bit, it never amounts to that. Maybe in the last 15 years, I would say that these processes have resulted in very little change that would have otherwise taken place. I'll give it turnpike housing. It made a difference in that. It was a minor factor in the City Council of Santa Barbara pursuing a plan for more multifamily housing on the Haley and Gutierrez corridors and on the east side. But it wasn't even the main factor. It wasn't even the main factor was our own need for housing. So I think that there's here and there, this state process goads us into doing some things, but for the most part, we should just be building the housing that our people need because it's the right thing to do, not because somebody is telling us to do it.
Thank you very much. Director Hartman, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Becker, I'm curious, how do they define units? And where do tiny homes and ADUs and now mini ADUs, how does that fit in and contribute to our meeting our numbers?
Yeah, Director Hartman, very good question. A housing unit is a housing unit, whether it be a tiny home or a mansion. So, and I think a lot of the jurisdictions will, at the end of the day, accommodate a portion of their housing need through accessory units or through assumptions related to accessory units. So yeah, it doesn't have to be of a particular size. It has to be a housing unit. It could be an ADU or a tiny home or a mobile home or an apartment, and that's just as much credit as another mansion.
Thank you. And I have one other question, if you'll indulge me. Once we get these numbers, I think in the past they kind of sit there. There is some rezoning that goes along with it. But I would be very interested in how we do plan as a county regionally for additional housing needs. I think we need to do it for quality of life reasons, for greenhouse gas reduction reasons, and so I'm interested in, once we get through this phase, what happens? How do we work together to best address these housing needs that affect us all and other kinds of impacts, like how much people have to pay for housing, houseless, unsheltered people. So I think we really need to do more to try to build the housing and figure it out. And what's that process?
Director Hartman, I think there has been some discussions at the staff level of a need to do some kind of comprehensive assessment of housing in the region outside of the RENA process. And I think as we develop our work program in a coming year, sometime between now and the next RENA cycle, that potentially we can work a project in that we can work with our local agencies on some type of comprehensive housing, regional housing need project.
All righty, thank you. I have, first of all, Director Clark, if you have a question, this is the time to ask it, and then we will go to Director Hart.
Thank you very much. I do have a question, and that relates to this discussion about, well, you don't really have to build all your RENA allocation. Do I recall? I just vaguely recall. I mean, there's so much time in between all these things, and like everybody else, I have other governmental fish to fry in my poor little brain. But don't I recall some language about this current round that we're going to get really tough about this, and if you don't build all your units, those past units are going to accumulate and go into the next cycle. And by the way, Carpinteria does build 100% of their allocation, but that would the before that was my question about this accumulation of unbuilt allocation.
Director Clark, in this cycle, there's been, other than the relationship between overcrowding and cost burden being a result of past underproduction, there's no carryover. I know that there's been some law changes related to SB 35 that says if you're not meeting your low-income housing need, the developers gain some rights. And also, if a jurisdiction doesn't have a certified housing element, so if the city does not seek to accommodate its allocation and get that certified by HCD, I believe then you would start to have carryover in future cycles. And also, I think over the last couple of years, you've seen the Attorney General take legal action against some cities that failed to update their housing elements. But in this process, other than the relationship between overcrowding and cost burden, there's no carryover. So if the city does have zone capacity, say for 500 units, and they get an allocation of 900 units, it's only the difference that they would have to seek to accommodate.
All righty, Director Hart?
Yeah, I was intrigued by Mr. Becker's comments about accessory dwelling units being able to be counted toward the RENA numbers. And has TTAC talked about that as a strategy, countywide? What is the capacity of accessory dwelling units under just the existing state law to match the RENA numbers? Is there a big gap, or is that a really logical solution to
accommodate this additional demand?
Yeah, Director Hart, ultimately, I think it's a question for the community development directors of each local jurisdiction, because that is going to be a jurisdiction by jurisdiction question that needs to be answered. But it's my understanding that the accessory units can certainly be counted towards satisfying housing need. I believe the assumptions have to be based on reality. You couldn't just say, well, we haven't produced any over the last 20 years, but we're going to assume that all our new housing units are accessory units. You have to demonstrate that, in line with what you've achieved in the past, you can carry that forward to make some assumptions. But I do encourage you to ask your community development director.
But that past performance doesn't reflect the changes in state law that have made it much easier to get accessory dwelling units. So that if you were to look back even 5 years ago, the production of accessory dwelling units is completely different than it was in the last 2 years. So you could look at the most recent performance and use that as a better barometer of future production.
Director Hart, that's my understanding. And I think, yes, because that law is not going away, or at least we can assume that it's not going away. So you can assume that your recent housing production is going to carry forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, any other questions for staff?
Chair Sierra, I see no hands raised.
All righty. Then we will open public comment on this. Do we have any public comment? Anything provided in advance or?
I've received no public comment in advance. I do see 3 attendees, but nobody has their hands raised unless one of you would like to make a public comment. Please raise your hand. Oh,
No.
no hands
Okay.
raised. Thank you.
Bringing it back to the board for further discussion and then a motion to direct staff how to go about. Any other discussion? All righty. A motion perhaps to either accept or to object to the determination.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and accept the determination and also direct staff to include some language in the letter addressing the H2A issue and how that might be affecting our overcrowding.
Hartman seconds.
All righty. Thank you both very much. Terry?
Director Williams?
And I gotta be in the alphabet where I'm not first on arena days. Aye.
Hart?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Patino?
No.
Nelson?
Aye.
Lavanino?
Aye.
Eurig?
Aye.
Cardenas?
Aye.
Osborne?
Aye.
Parodi?
Aye.
Clark? Director Clark? You're muted.
No.
No? Okay,
Wait. No.
no,
Sorry.
gotcha. Director Murillo?
I'll be voting no because our city council hasn't received a presentation yet from Mr. Becker. Thank you.
Okay, and Chair Sierra?
Aye.
Motion passes 10-3.
All righty. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 6 into the...
I see Director Hartman has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Hartman. I can't see hands raised up here. Go ahead.
Director Hartman, you're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for, we did get a reduction in numbers, and I know they've made a lot of presentations, and I think they did a terrific job. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I agree. Item 6.
Wait, hold on. Director,
Madam Chair, may I make just one more remark as Director Hartman did? I too appreciate the adjustments and I acknowledge them. But I would hope as we go forward that there would be a commitment that funding for housing would match the allocations that, the units that are given to each community. So I honestly being a little selfish about that, but hoping that there would be a correlation there to be fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams?
And one more postscript.
Before we move to item 6?
Is just the request was made by Director Clark for public housing solution. If the city could identify land in the city of Carpinteria, I am sure the county housing authority, since the city does not have its own housing authority, would be willing to provide that role.
Thank you. Item 6.
Item 6, Highway 101 Business Plan. Receive an update on the development of the Central Coast Highway 101 Business Plan and provide feedback to SBCAG and Caltrans staff.
All righty, and we have Sarkis Kacek and Caltrans making the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Directors. Good morning. Sarkis Kacek, Director of Programming here at SBCAG. And I'm joined today by Mr. Scott Eads and Ms. Vanessa Fowle with Caltrans District 5. Today, we're providing your board with an update on the development of the Highway 101 business plan for California's Central Coast. First, I'd like to just give you a description of the Central Coast Coalition. We formed in 2010 with the other regional agencies and metropolitan planning agencies on California's Central Coast within Caltrans District 5. We formed to raise the profile of Highway 101 as a major economic asset to the state and nation and to encourage investment in the corridor. SBCAG has served as the administrating agency for the coalition since 2010, and Executive Director Margie Kern serves as chair, and I am the chief of staff of the coalition. On an ongoing basis, we meet and participate in a series of activities with our Central Coast partners as well as our state partners. And in this photo, you can see a photo of our coalition with Secretary David Kim. This was in December of 2019 in San Luis Obispo County. So he was able to come down to our area and visit with us. Today, we are receiving an update from Caltrans on development of the Highway 101 business plan. Excuse me, this mask is... the purpose of the plan is that it's replicating what the Central Valley partners did with their Highway 99 business plan, which is something they developed a few years ago. And because they had that plan in place, once the state was developing a bond measure for transportation, they included $1 billion for Highway 99 for the Central Valley in Proposition 1B. And so this plan will help us identify priorities for investment with our state partners. Now I will hand over the presentation to Mr. Scott Eads and Vanessa Fowle, and they will give an update on the development of the plan.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarkis. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Scott Eads with Caltrans District 5, and I'll just give a super brief intro here and then turn it over to Vanessa. So we appreciate the board taking time to receive the update on the business plan today. This effort is being led by Caltrans. However, it really is the genesis of the Central Coast Coalition, as Sarkis had mentioned, and it does cover all 5 counties of the Central Coast that represent District 5. And then by way of introduction, we all know the importance of 101 and how it serves as a lifeline to the Central Coast communities, connecting housing with jobs and for moving freight and for commute travel. At a very high level, this plan will clarify the importance of 101 for Central Coast communities. It'll also help to clarify the importance of freight movement, interregional travel in and out of our region, and then make a business case for prioritizing and funding critical improvements related to 101 in our region. So it'll also synthesize and build on statewide, regional, and local planning efforts and make a case for funding priority projects with state and federal funding sources. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Vanessa. Vanessa Fowle is from our systems planning branch and is helping to lead this effort. And I'll turn it over to Vanessa now.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Really appreciate it. My name is Vanessa Fowle. I'm a transportation planner with Caltrans District 5. And I am well aware that most of you have already been introduced to the business plan, and a majority of the slides were in previous meetings, but I'll quickly go over them again for context. So with that said, I'll just start us off with our introduction slide right here. A business plan is a little bit different from a traditional corridor plan, with its key difference being that the business plan has a focus on developing a financial strategy. The business plan will state the total funding need, explore funding sources, and link priority transportation projects to potential funding programs. And as Sarkis has already talked about, our business plan is modeled after the Central Valley State Route 99 business plan, which ultimately provided $1 billion in bonds for State Route 99 improvements. And the last thing I want to mention here is that the business plan uses research and findings from previous corridor plans. Next slide, please. Inter-district US 101 is very long, as you can see on this map, so we divided the stretch into 11 segments based on traffic flow and land use patterns. Next slide. This slide just shows the zoomed-in map of Santa Barbara County and its business plan segments, and just FYI, you can find all of the limits for all of the 11 segments on our business plan website, which is linked to in the staff report package. Next slide. As already mentioned, the business plan is a partnership effort of the Central Coast Coalition. And in the beginning stages of the business plan efforts, we created a charter which established the objectives and intended outcomes of the plan. And all of the coalition partners also signed off on it. And if you're interested, you can find the full charter text on our website or in the staff report packet. Next slide. As already mentioned, the business plan builds on existing corridor plans and other studies because a lot of solid work has already been done in the region. So this slide just shows some of the plans that we have reviewed and are using to create the foundation of the business plan. The priorities in the business plan will be derived from projects identified in those existing plans and any other efforts. Next slide. The plan will help us state a business case for making investments in the US 101 corridor and present a unified front to inform statewide priorities for investment, such as Senate Bill 1 programs and federal transportation funding programs. The plan will also provide input to statewide plans like those shown on the slide. Next slide. We identified these 5 goal areas that are shared by all transportation stakeholders on the Central Coast. And it was really important to us to make sure our partners and stakeholders can take ownership over these goals, and that our goals also align with Executive Order N1919 and N7920. So this means that we are supporting the state's climate goals, and we're also pushing for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and of vehicle miles traveled. Next slide. So this slide here looks very similar, but it actually links our priority project types to the goals from the previous slide. And this is something that the State Route 99 business plan model did too. So these project types are really important as they will help us accomplish our goals. And we would hope to hear from you to make sure everything is captured correctly. So please let me know if you have any comments or recommendations for these priority project types. Next slide. So this slide just shows the different stakeholders that will help shape the plan. And this group right here falls into the board category. We hope to receive some feedback from you. And now in the next slide, I'll spend a little bit more time talking about the focus groups. So next slide, please. So back in December, Caltrans and SBCAG jointly hosted a virtual focus group that included various stakeholders from the Santa Barbara region. And you can see some of the attendees listed on the right of the slide. In this December focus group, we provided information on the business plan. We received some context that we will be inviting to future focus groups. And we also heard from stakeholders' priorities and needs for the US 101 corridor. And just to give a quick overview, stakeholders were concerned with congestion, air pollution, lack of EV charging infrastructure, and more. These concerns, along with the feedback we received, will be great information for the business plan moving forward, and it was really helpful for us to hear from the local stakeholders. So next slide, please. This is what our current schedule looks like. And we had to slightly adjust our outreach schedule because we realized that our engagement process took a little longer than we expected. So we're looking to start the next round of focus groups in April. And this will likely be one big meeting, but we will be sending out more information regarding this soon. We're still figuring out some details for this. And we are planning to find out more about the challenges and trends that are unique to each segment. And you may remember that we originally planned on being done by March of this year, but we've adjusted our schedule and hope to have a draft document done by the end of our fiscal year, which would be the end of June. And next slide. That was the end of my presentation. Thank you again so much for having me here today. And you can see my contact info on the slide. And Kelly's info was on there as well, but he couldn't make it to today's meeting. But please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any questions to staff?
Chair Sierra, I see no hands raised.
No questions. Is there any open public comment? Is there any public
excuse
comment?
me. Director Hartman just raised her hand.
Director Hartman, please. Question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really interesting and really exciting. I'm struggling to formulate my question. This is to serve existing businesses, I gather, and to justify why we need more investments in the 101. But I guess what I'm wondering is how much, are we looking at rest stops and hotels and how we serve people who are traveling? Or I'm still struggling to get my arms around what business in the business plan means.
Sarkis?
I can take that, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Eads.
Director Hartman, really, when we say business case, it's really a business case or making a solid case for the funding sources that we have available to fund transportation projects. So while we're recognizing that, the importance of commerce and the role that 101 serves in making sure that goods come and go and that our communities are well served and interregional travel occurs, it's not necessarily focused on any specific business as much as making a case for funding the transportation improvements that we need to make sure that 101 continues to serve as an important transportation resource for our communities and our businesses. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff from the board? None. Okay. Then we open it up for public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Chair Sierra, we received no public comment, and we have no public in attendance.
All righty. Then I am closing public comment, bringing it back to the board. Is there any discussion? This is an information update only, so there is no action taken, but does anybody have any comments, anything they'd like to discuss? No. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. I look forward to seeing the final document done the end of June, and it was a good presentation. Thank you very much.
Director Hartman has her hand raised.
Director Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to be slow on the draw today. I'm still thinking about this, and particularly about the active transportation piece of it. And I wonder if you could talk, just elaborate how that fits into making the business case. If you could spin that out as an example.
Okay, who wants to take that?
I can take that one as well, and then.
Thank you, Mr.
I was getting the slide back up. Go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair and Director Hartman. So 101, while it does a great job of serving interregional travel, it also serves as a barrier for bicycle and pedestrian travel, because a lot of times there's I should say several locations on 101 especially on the South Coast, it's a freeway and bicycle and pedestrians are not allowed. So, and then the other aspect to that is not only do we want to think about making sure that 101 doesn't serve as a barrier and that we can provide connectivity where it's broken. We also see that going, down the road, the funding sources that we have at our disposal are really wanting to make sure that there's a multimodal focus. So not only are we serving the mainline travel, but we're thinking about and planning for the folks that are bicycling and walking and taking other trip types. So it's sort of a dual focus there, and that it is a barrier in some cases, and we need to figure out. And that's part of this planning process. Is another planning process is making sure that bicycle and pedestrian and transit travel is accommodated well, especially in areas where it's more of a challenge with 101. And as well as making sure we're aligning all these types of projects, including bicycle and pedestrian projects, for future funding sources. Hopefully that answers the question. Happy to add more.
It's a start. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on? None? Okay.
Director Uhrig has his hand raised.
Director Uhrig, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I guess must be the San Ynez Valley. Makes us a little slow up there. We're so relaxed. Anyways, I just had a question kind of related to the same thing. You're talking about the alternative transportation options, but in some of those areas that you mentioned in the South Coast, are those going to be widening type of projects? I know we have some pinch points at our tunnel area where there's really not a lot of area to be able to widen and make that even a little bit more, if you're trying to put pedestrians there where we really have kind of a pretty low, I'm trying to think of the term, I guess just a pinch point for me because of so many accidents that happen there when the weather turns. But is it strictly in order to be able to accommodate the pedestrians and bikes? Is it going to be widening of these lanes, or is there other options such as, way off of the grid bike paths through some other areas like that? Just wanted a clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eads?
Yep, happy to take that one as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in answer to that question, part of what we're doing here is assimilating the planning work that's already been done and the fact that we have plans at the statewide level that provide a policy framework and some direction in terms of priorities statewide for transportation. We also have regional transportation plans and local plans. So what we're trying to do here is assimilate all these different planning efforts and find consistent themes, and then also be able to support funding applications in terms of the fact that some projects are well supported by these range of planning efforts, and that the needs associated with the plan identification, if you will, in terms of the projects they're identifying, are well founded. So we're not actually doing like one-on-one in motion, for instance, which was years ago, that's really supported a host of different projects in the South Coast corridor, came with a substantial amount of operational and travel modeling and forecasting analysis. We're not doing that here. It's not part of the scope of the study. So it's really drawing from the host of projects that are already out there and identifying how they align with planning priorities, and at the statewide level as well as the local level. So we're not necessarily reinventing and studying a whole host of new scenarios as much as making sure we're identifying the projects that already exist through these different planning efforts, and again, showing how those align with the funding sources that we have to implement those projects. In terms of some of the things you mentioned in terms of bicycle and pedestrian connectivity on 101 in other parts of the county, for instance, we do have other efforts that are happening right now. So when we get to the director's briefing, I was going to mention that we have an active transportation plan for District 5 that's out for review right now that has been looking at that very thing. How are our bicycle and pedestrians served, and what kind of facilities do we have, and where do we have breaks in terms of the facilities to serve those folks. And in terms of, widening where we have some congestion issues or safety issues, those types of things should have been identified in other planning efforts, and we'll be acknowledging those and again identifying how those fit with future funding priorities moving forward.
All righty, thank you. That answer it, Director Uhrig?
Yes, I think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm giving just a little pause here, see if anybody else pops up. Moving on to item number 7. Would you please read item 7 into the record?
Thank you. Item 7, Active Transportation Program Cycle 5 funding. Receive a presentation on the California Transportation Commission staff recommendations for the Cycle 5 of the Active Transportation Program.
Thank you. And again, we've got Sarkis Kachek and Jackie Mata with the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Directors. So yes, I'm joined by my colleague Jackie Mata this morning. Today, we're providing your board with an update on the staff recommendations from the California Transportation Commission for Cycle 5 of the Active Transportation Program, or ATP as it's known. ATP is a statewide competitive program that provides funding for projects to increase biking and walking and to also provide safer routes to school. Approximately $200 million is available per year through a competitive cycle. The staff recommendations came out last week, and while our region did submit several projects requesting substantial amount of funding, we are disappointed to share with you that only one project has been recommended from our region, and that was for the city of Santa Barbara for their Upper De La Vina project for $2 million. And Ms. Mata will go into more detail on the projects, but as you can see, ATP continues to be very oversubscribed and a very popular program. This cycle, $445 million was available, and the state received 454 applications requesting $2.3 billion. So that gives you an idea of the scale. Our region is only eligible for 60% of funding through the statewide and small urban rural pots because we are not considered a large metropolitan planning organization, or we do not have an urbanized area with population greater than 200,000. So we will be working with our local partners on receiving feedback from the CTC and also to debrief with them at the next TTAC meeting and to provide that input to CTC staff. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Ms. Mata that will provide more details. And there's an attachment in your staff report that has detailed project information.
Thank you. Ms. Mata?
Good morning, Chair and Directors. I'll briefly go over what's summarized at the top in the attachment. So the programming years for Cycle 5 are fiscal years 21-22 to 24-25. With 50% for the statewide plot, 40% for large MPO regions, and 10% for the small urban and rural areas. Like Sarkis mentioned, our region is only eligible for the statewide plot and small urban and rural plot. Overall, 453 applications were submitted, and our region submitted 11 applications requesting $91.5 million. The CTC ultimately ended up recommending 50 applications. And if you look at the second table in the staff report, you can see how many projects are being recommended by category. So for the statewide pot, which is 50%, 41 projects are being recommended with a cutoff score of 92, which is a very high score compared to the previous cycle. And then for the small urban and rural pot, which is 10% of the funding available, 9 projects are being recommended, and the cutoff score is 90. And so attachment A shows all the projects that our region submitted, and the highlighted project is the one that was selected from our region to be recommended for funding. SBCAG staff will work with TTAC to receive feedback on ATP Cycle 5, and will coordinate on providing feedback to the CTC. also recommend that our local partners request debriefings with CTC staff, just so we can improve as a region for the next cycles. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank
Chair.
you, Sarkis.
Thank you, Jackie. I did want to mention that while we were not successful in this cycle, our region has been fairly successful statewide in prior cycles. And so it's just a matter of how the projects were evaluated and met certain criteria each cycle. And so while we're disappointed for this cycle, our region continues to be successful through the program, and we're going to make sure that we help our local partners to be ready for the next cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff?
Chair CRC, no hands raised.
All righty, then I open it to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
And Chair Sierra, we have no public comment for this.
I'm closing.
Wait, excuse me.
Yes.
Director Hartman just raised her hand.
Okay, closing public comment, going to Director Hartman.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Were the evaluation criteria the same this time as they were in the past, or did they change?
Chair Sierra, Director Hartman, the main areas continue to be fairly similar each cycle. It's just a matter of there's some minor adjustments that are made by each section. And so we can provide some of that information at a future meeting, but for the most part, everything stays the same. There's still a priority on providing improvements to disadvantaged communities, but most projects meet that requirement. And then the other section that really helps the project sponsor is by providing a local match. We realize that local fund sources are scarce, but by providing some leveraging, that allows you to get some points. And so that's what we've noticed in this cycle is that projects that meet the disadvantaged communities, reach a high number of users, and then also have a local match, that those are projects that are competitive.
I've got a question.
Okay, is this Director Nelson?
It is.
Please,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
So, Sarkis, do we have access to the scoring sheets for all these projects? And is that something that is reviewable?
Chair Sierra, Director Nelson, excellent question. And we actually did reach out to CTC staff and received the score sheets for them. And so we provided them to our project sponsors.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be looking to my public works to get that information.
Good. Okay. No more questions? Any discussion? This was an information update only, therefore no action is required. Nothing? All right.
Not yet.
Then, if I could get you to please read item 8 into the record, moving on. And thank you for the information.
Certainly. Item 8, earthquake warning, California. Receive presentation from the California Office of Emergency Services on earthquake warning, California.
All righty, and this presentation is going to be by Lauren Bianchi-Clement.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sierra and fellow board members. It is my pleasure to introduce two representatives from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services to present a brief overview on the Earthquake Warning California campaign, Amanda Moyer and Emily Holland. There have been similar presentations of this campaign throughout the state at various levels of local governments and a number of council of governments. SBCAG staff coordinated with the Santa Barbara County Office of Emergency Management prior to scheduling this presentation. And we hope that you can take the toolkit resources provided to you in the staff report and the information shared with you today to help amplify the campaign among residents you serve in your respective cities and unincorporated areas. So a little bit about our speakers. Amanda Moyer is the program manager and advisory board executive officer for Earthquake Warning California. She's been with Cal OES for approximately 10 years, and specifically within the California State Warning Center operations. She also has experience with the California Department of Public Health and Emergency Preparedness Office as an analyst and involved in the healthcare emergency preparedness. Emily Holland is also with us online, and she's the public policy specialist who leads education and outreach for Earthquake Warning California. She has been with that office for approximately 5 years. And prior to joining Cal OES, she worked in the California Assembly and is known by our very own Director Williams. She worked with him when he was in the Assembly, so a familiar name and face. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Amanda Moyer and Emily Holland.
Thank you. Ladies?
Great. Thank you for having us today. We appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. So the Earthquake Warning California Don't Get Caught Off Guard campaign is a statewide education effort to help the public learn about earthquake warning tools and resources. Cal OES, in collaboration with our partners who include the United States Geological Survey, UC Berkeley, Caltech, and the California Geologic Survey, launched the nation's first early earthquake warning system in October of 2019. So this system uses ground motion sensors in smartphones to detect an earthquake before humans can feel the shaking. It issues a shake alert message in real time so that we can take cover before shaking happens. And earthquake warning can provide additional seconds for people to drop cover and hold on. So we'll just take a moment to walk through the presentation on earthquake early warning in California. And I unfortunately cannot view the presentation, so I am going to pull that up quickly here. It's just tiny on my screen. And Emily, if you have that handy, if you could send that to me also, please.
You might be able to pin the window by the 3 dots on the corner of the image.
Perfect.
Thank you. Largest.
Great. Thank you. Yes. So earthquake warning in California, as I mentioned, the system relies on innovative technology, such as those smartphone sensors that are placed strategically throughout the state that sends warning to smartphones, operating systems of phones, and through the wireless emergency alert system. So much like you receive a severe weather alert or an Amber Alert, you can now receive an earthquake early warning. So this can help in many ways, helps the public, first responders, and utilities take action to save lives. So even just a few moments of a warning, much action can take place in those few moments. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, Cal OES does not do this alone. We have partners with the United States Geologic Survey, USGS, UC Berkeley, Caltech, and California Department of Conservation. Here is a map of the sensors that I mentioned that are placed throughout the state. The green sensors are currently contributing, and the orange sensors are new sensors that we are adding every day to the system.
So we have 3 main ways that the public can currently receive earthquake warnings from Earthquake Warning California. The first is the MyShake mobile app. This app was developed by UC Berkeley with funding from the state of California through the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And this app not only provides public alerting and signs to trigger people to drop cover and hold on, but it also provides social science research. So it uses the features in your phone that allow you to change the accelerometer from it being a landscape to a portrait view. And in mass, it's able to collect that data when there's the beginning of an earthquake and use it to potentially increase the amount of time we're able to give people warning. The app is available for free from Google Play and the Apple App Store. We just want to be very clear that there is data that is collected associated with your phone's movements by UC Berkeley for research in this purpose, but there is no personal or identifiable information taken from users and stored by the university. Next slide, please. Another way that people can get alerts is through the Android earthquake warnings. We are very excited that Google partnered with USGS and Cal OES last summer, and in August released earthquake warnings through the iOS system. So this, instead of having to download an app, or in addition to, people can simply adjust their phone settings if they have an Android device to receive alerts. These Android alerts come through the same system and the sensors that Amanda talked about that are placed throughout the state. Next slide, please. We also send them out through wireless emergency alerts, as Amanda mentioned. WEA alerts are often used for things like amber or silver alerts, as well as for severe weather. The great thing about using these alerts is that most modern phones, the vast majority, already have this capability built in, and it just depends on who is closest to a cell phone tower that is estimated to receive levels of shaking. We wanted to point out that there are different alert thresholds. The MyShake app and Android earthquake alerts both let people know if a 4.5 earthquake or above has occurred, and they're going to experience weak shaking. But there's a bit of a higher threshold for WEA alerts. They only occur if there's been a magnitude 5.0 earthquake or higher, and people will experience light shaking. All of the alert determinations are made based off of the estimation of where the phone is and the person having the phone, what level of shaking they'll experience. Next slide, please. We also are using, as part of this campaign, just gentle reminders to people about what they should do during earthquakes. We've all had a little bit of time since probably our last drill, so just reminders about why it's important to drop cover and hold on underneath the table to protect your head. How movements to get to a safer place can often be more dangerous than staying where you are and adjusting your circumstances. And we are all very fortunate to live in California, where we have great building standards that mean that we're usually safer in our home than that instinct to run outdoors. Next slide, please. We also wanted to highlight that there are some current industrial uses for earthquake warnings within the state of California. Some of the most notable are that BART has been using for approximately the last 10 years earthquake warnings to slow trains when there are earthquakes, preventing derailing and injury to passengers. Eagle Rock High School in the Los Angeles area has also been providing PA alerts to students and staff so that they can take appropriate action. And Cedars-Sinai has also implemented a PA system as well, so that doctors and nurses can assess the best ways to protect themselves and then protect the patient. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Emily. So just as a recap, some of the resources available, we are encouraging everyone to download the MyShake application if you don't have it on your phone already, and adjust the phone setting to enable the location. Visit earthquake.ca.gov to see the latest information posted there. And on our newly revamped website, as part of the campaign, we have tools and resources available to you to help more easily spread the word about the campaign and resources. There's sample.
I think Amanda's volume may have just cut out. I think she was saying that there are sample social media posts that are available, as well as sample newsletter language that can be used by anyone. And we hope that you are all willing to take this back to your community, and please extend our offer to come to presentations and to give lengthy descriptions to anyone you would like. We would be happy to come to that. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from staff? Director Williams.
No, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Holland and her colleague for their work. And I am attempting to download the app right now, though I need to remember my Apple password to do it, but I will get it done. I have been known to be able to occasionally handle some tech matters on my own, and this is an important one, and so I'm hoping all members of the public download the MyShake app. You know, our community is used to dealing with natural disasters now, but it's important for us to be looking not at the ones we've just experienced, fire, flood, pandemic, but the next one, and odds are it's going to be an earthquake.
Thank you, Director Williams. Any other questions?
Chair Sierra, I see no hands raised.
All righty, then I'm going to open it up to public comment. Is there any members from the public wishing to talk about this item?
I see no public comment.
Okay, then I'm closing public comment. Again, this is an information update only, so no action. Is there any discussion, any comments from the board regarding this important information?
Oh, sorry, Director Perotti just raised her hand.
Director Perotti, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the presenters for letting everyone know about this. When I first started on the City Council in 2010, I remember attending a session on a discussion on this in Berkeley when it was being just developed. So here it is, and it's available to all of us, and I just think it's a fabulous opportunity. I too will be downloading it as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Director Murillo would like to speak.
Director Murillo, please.
On behalf of the City of Santa Barbara, I'd like to thank Ms. Hollard and Ms. Moyer too. And we don't want an earthquake, but we should be ready for one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. No hands?
I think that's it.
I'm going to have to fix that next meeting. Thank you. Okay. Now we move on to 1-minute reports. This is your opportunity to give us an update on the activities in your districts or cities. Anybody?
Chair Sierra, Director Perotti.
Director Perotti, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I just want to briefly talk about our last meeting, our council meeting on February the 16th. Council received a presentation regarding the status of the draft Santa Barbara Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan and the airport runway safety zones, which focused on revisions proposed by the city staff and a consultant that addressed displaced land use, including housing, creating nonconformities. Caltrans handbook offered more flexibility, internal inconsistencies in the draft plan, and inadequate SEQA review. So we were all very pleased with the report, and the next step in the process is to transmit the edits to the draft, the Santa Barbara Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, and revise the airport safety zones to this board, SBCAG, and staff for review, and the expectations that the SBCAG board would consider adoption of the revised plan. So I just want to let you know also that it was very well received from the homeowners that had a lot of concerns, the business community, and legal representatives that represented the business community and our council. So it was very well received. I just want to let you know about that. End of report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other 1-minute reports?
Chair Sierra, Director Murillo.
Director Murillo.
Thank you so much. A quick update on us implementing our bicycle master plan. We're working through design issues related to the east-west connection, and we started an electric bicycle program. It's happening in the downtown area, but the waterfront portion of it has been appealed to the Coastal Commission. So we'll be working through those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair Sierra, Director Uhrig.
Director Eurig.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick update. I wanted to thank Mr. Becker, for coming to do arena presentation at our city council meeting last time. So it really helped answer some of the questions that we have with the limited space that we have available, as most of you all have the same issues. And then the other thing I wanted to just update was that Measure A funds from SBCAG had given us approximately 30% of a project for our safe schools around Solvang School, and that was $90,000, and that was just completed over the last couple of weeks. I just wanted to thank you all for that opportunity for our kids to provide some safe sidewalks and curbs. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams?
Well, I just wanted to highlight for any members of the public and also for you, because you interact with members of the public, that the county is doing another rental assistance project. We are using aid funds to provide rental assistance. There is income eligibility, but it also includes people in the incorporated areas in this round. So people who are interested can go to United Way or can contact Mr. Hart, Ms. Hartman, my office, or any of your other supervisors for more information.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Who am I hearing? Alice. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is-
Director Patino.
Director Patino at Santa Maria.
Please.
Just up the road here. I wanted to say that we did finish some resurfacing work for our annual surface seal project in Santa Maria, and we completed 20 to 25 centerline miles of city streets. This was a cost for the project was $1.8 million and is funded primarily through the SB1 gas tax, in addition to existing gas tax revenues. And Public Works application for from our block grant development pedestrian safety improvement project, which we did, with total funds sought were $240,000. And that'll come through Measure A and CDBG. And in our Santa Maria Transit, we are providing free Wi-Fi. We have also moved, as most of you have probably done, moved the fare box, relocated them in the buses. And we have our SMAT buses. In discussion with Allen Hancock College, we've developed a pass for our student riders. And this will be a pilot project slated to begin in 2021 summer semester. So it'll be providing all the AHC students with use of with their student ID. And we've adopted the Santa Maria Active Transportation Plan in Santa Maria. And that is about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the Executive Director's Report.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. First of all, I want to thank the board members that attended our training session last week. I know it was a full 2 hours of information, and hopefully hopefully it was helpful to the new board members and the ongoing board members as well. So thank you for attending that. Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced it is seeking applicants for the 2021 round of Infrastructure for Rebuilding America, which we refer to as INFRA, discretionary grant program. So this was a surprise to us. It's coming down, and the applications are due March 19th. So we're planning on submitting an application for the Highway 101 project. Approximately $889 million is available. This is similar to last cycles where it was about $1 billion per cycle. So this is a quick turnaround for us. So we're going to get that application out the door and hopefully cross our fingers something will come out of that. The Focus on the Future virtual conference is March 22nd and 23rd. We were given 3 additional slots. Director Sierra is already attending. So if somebody else would like to attend, We have 3 slots. It's virtual, so you don't have to travel anywhere. So it's March 22nd and 23rd. So we'll accept volunteers from the board. First come, first serve. So there's 3 slots. I also want to congratulate Director Hart for being elected the Vice Chairman of the Low Sand Policy Board. This is very important to our region as we were providing peak hour commute train service last year at this time, and that was discontinued because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So hopefully with his position in that role, we'll see that reinstated hopefully soon. Next week, we have our Measure A Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. I think that is on Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, correct? Wednesday, thank you. Wednesday, the 24th at 6 o'clock. And again, this is a virtual meeting. Public's invited to attend and any other members. They'll be reviewing our annual report, among other items. And last but not least, I just want to let folks know that SBCAG staff is volunteering at the EOC to help register residents for their COVID-19 vaccinations. And I actually participated in yesterday, and it was quite a day because there were a lot of cancellations due to the weather across the nation. So we had to reschedule some folks and rearrange some schedules, and it was quite an endeavor. It was a very, very busy day, and if anybody is interested in volunteering, they really need the help. So that was an eye-opening experience for myself, and Dave Troutner of our staff also volunteered. So we're doing our part to help out. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your volunteering. It is needed. Any questions for Ms. Kern? No? Okay. Moving on then to our Caltrans report. Mr. Eads.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, Scott Eads again. And I already gave a little foreshadowing on the one announcement that I have, and that is that our draft active transportation plan for District 5 is out for public review. This plan focuses primarily on the bicycle and pedestrian network, and as part of that process, or part of the process of developing this plan, we did a very thorough inventory of all of our entire system within District 5, both from a bicyclist standpoint and a pedestrian standpoint. And that is now housed in a GIS database that will help us not only, firm up an understanding of our needs as part of this planning process, but also continue to evaluate those for programming opportunities moving forward, because we have this GIS database now. So as part of the plan development process, let's see here. I also wanted to say that there's other things that come into this planning process. We're focusing also on social equity, reconnecting neighborhoods that maybe have had a break in travel due to the state highway system, like I mentioned earlier, and then improving access for all transportation modes, including bikes and peds and other users. And then finally, just wanted to highlight that the plan is out. It's on the catplan.org website, and there's a District 5 specific page on that website. We're looking to receive comments by Tuesday, March 9th. Again, there's multiple. I should actually, one final clarification, there's a few different parts to what's there for review. One is the plan itself, which is a fairly short summary document, and then there's also what we're calling a story map, which is a GIS-based web interface, which you can dive a little deeper into location-specific areas and add comments there as well on what you see as needs or what the public might see as needs. Happy to take any questions. That's all I have for today.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We move on to committee reports. We've got Calvans.
Chair Sierra, I don't believe Director Julian's here unless,
Okay, and Director Cardenas. Okay.
I don't know, Director Cardenas, do you have anything to report for Director Julian?
Hello, yes, I do.
Oh, thank you.
Hello.
So I have some notes I'll be reading off for Director Julian. Minutes from 1/14/21 were circulated as informational items only as board lacked a quorum to proceed formally. Joe Neves, County of Kings, representing Kings County Association of Government, agreed to continue serving as CalVans. Chuck Wynn, County of San Joaquin, representing San Joaquin Council of Government, was unanimously elected as vice chair. A number of newly appointed representatives were added to the 2021 member agency board. Riverside County Transportation Commission requested details on the 1920 financials. Responses submitted to RCTC were satisfactory, and the revised financial report for fiscal year 1920 was approved by the board. Additionally, there was other questions raised by members regarding the draft financials. All questions were answered, leading to the approval of the fiscal year 1920 financials. A liquidity option for Merchants Fleet was discussed, and based on information provided, staff did not anticipate needing to move forward with liquidity options. Staff secured the customary $10 million in insurance coverage for 14 months. Those vehicles in storage and not in use because of the pandemic were eliminated from insurance coverage. Insurance coverage for marijuana cannabis was discussed, as there were concerns that this coverage would be eliminated from the CalVans main insurance policy. It was clarified that marijuana cannabis coverage would remain in the main insurance policy. Cal OSHA's COVID-19 emergency transportation standards, effective 12/1/19, required a 3 feet of separation for most van pools. Because of this requirement, several employers were asking for additional vehicles to comply with this mandate. Employers continued asking for driver clearances and submitting reservations for increased number of vans. In total, there are 427 active van pools and 352 vehicles in storage. 118 other vans are being prepared for auction. Trail balance information as of January 31st, 2021 was represented to board members. Staff recommended that adjustments will continue in the area of personnel, closing of locations underperforming regions, and identification of older vehicles that can be sold to save on insurance, storage, etc. The independent auditor's report was submitted for review, as noted by George, Small, and Markarian Accountancy Corporation, dated 1/14/2020. Quote, material weaknesses were not identified, and material weaknesses may exist that may not have been identified. It was noted that the loan repayment per month was reduced to $197,000, and the next CalVans board meeting will be March 11. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Cardenas. Losan, Director Hart.
Yes, thank you. As Executive Director Kern mentioned, this week I was elected as Vice Chair of Losan's board, and you're exactly right. The reason for me to seek that position was to be at the table and to have a voice to help restore our train service and perhaps even enhance additional train service through the Losan board. And I'm encouraged by the news from the staff at Losan that they are beginning to make preparations and plans for later in this year, increasing service. You know, it's really been operating at a lifeline level because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but there is more interest in ridership, and people are, expressing an interest in having more train service. So they're going to begin the rollout of increasing service later summer, fall, depending on how things are going with the vaccination rate. So it's good news, and it's a great opportunity to represent Santa Barbara County on the Losan board.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Communications, the TTAC advisory and the Tech Planning Advisory Committee, the meeting minutes are in your packet, so we don't need to get into that. So with that, I am adjourning this meeting. Our next board meeting will be Thursday, March 18th at 10 a.m. Thank you all very much.